Përshëndetje motra.
Mirë se keni ardhur në Trime podcast.
I'm Leonarda.
I'm Lejla. Welcome home. Today we are joined by a young, inspiring guest, Martina, who is just 21, but at the age of 18, made the very bold decision to leave behind cultural expectations and that strict upbringing in search of true freedom and independence, and travelled across Australia at such a young age. And I guess there was a big part of your story that says that no matter where you went in the world, you realised that actually leaving that childhood trauma was just something that you couldn't outrun. Martina is currently writing a memoir at the age of 21.
What were we doing at 21?
I was at university getting drunk all the time, so we do not compare. You are fantastic compared to us.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
Genuinely. I was in the clouds in my rainbow life. I just thought everything was happy and pink.
Yeah. So your memoir is actually about exploring that complexity in the relationships between trauma and travel and identity and belonging. So would you like to introduce yourself a little bit more and tell us a bit more about your background and what led you to this moment of writing your memoir?
Yeah. So my name is Martina Romaj. I'm 21 years old. I'm from Munich, Germany. So please bear with me and my English. It might take me a minute or two to, form some sentences or get to the point. My family is Kosovo Albanian. We are from a small village called Kabash in Kosovo. And it was my grandfather who immigrated to Germany for economic reasons. He experienced hunger as a child, and he just didn't want the future generations to suffer the same as he did. So he moved abroad, left everything behind, and after a while built a life for himself and for our entire family. And I would say the first thing that I want to say before we get into this is that all the greatness that lives within me does come from my family, because I'm about to say really harsh and difficult things about them and about my upbringing, and I want people to know that I genuinely love them and that I blame them for my greatness as well as for, I wouldn't say blame, but I would say I have experienced a lot of pain because of the way I was raised, and that pain has shaped me, and that is the very reason why I'm here today. I want to speak up about many things, and I'm doing this for the little girl inside of me and for the girl who has chosen freedom, and coming to this podcast is part of that journey.
Well, we are really, really privileged to have you here. We were discussing just how wise you actually are, to the fact that probably so many people are going to be shocked that you're only 21. As we were saying, what were we doing at the age of 21? I was at university getting drunk the whole time. Definitely wasn't writing a memoir. So you're right. Growing up as an Albanian girl is really complex, and so many of us do truly love our families, but we do have these complicated relationships with them too, that involved a lot of conflict and cultural expectations and trauma. What was the first moment that you realised that the life expected of you didn't align with who you truly are?
I think it started really early on. I feel like the first 10 years as a child, you just kind of copy paste everything that your family does and says, and your parents are like your own gods, and you want to follow everything that they say. But at around you're in your early teens, at around the age of 11, you kind of start developing your own mind and your own opinions. And it was in a very random moment. I was 11 and I was having a crush on a classmate. Even at that age, even as a kid, I knew that was a no-go, that you're not supposed to have these feelings. You're not supposed to feel anything romantic for someone that is not Albanian.
Yeah.
And in a moment when we were kind of in a heated conversation, I just kind of dropped it, and I looked at my father and was like, you know what, Dad, what if I don't want to marry an Albanian man in the future? What if I'm actually even open to marry someone with any other cultural background for that matter? And my father was not too pleased at all. I feel like most Albanian fathers are, and mothers as well. So he screamed at me. He shamed me for having that opinion and even for just speaking it out loud. And from that moment on, my freedom of expression and exploration as a kid and a teenager was entirely violated. Like, I knew I won't be safe to speak up in my family. And I wasn't given any safe space to question anything, let alone build a new way of thinking. I had a choice to either do it hiding in my room if I wanted to be safe because I was just by myself, or the other path would be to be rebellious and to do it openly. And that was my path. Like, I just didn't want to pretend and smile at people and lie and just agree with everything that they're saying. I just wanted to keep vocalizing and show people who I am from the very beginning and what I believe in. And the consequence of that was that my fundament of trust and stability was taken away, like it was swooped away. Like by being threatened of being disowned when I grow older and I make all these choices. And the thing was that now as an adult, I know these were empty threats. They would actually not do that. Or so they say now. But back then as a child, I did believe everything that they would tell me. And the way they reacted towards my opinion was also a lot with emotional violence and emotional abuse. They would say all sorts of things like, you will not have a family if you continue down this road. You won't be anybody's daughter. Or like, don't make me send you to the hospital. I will die because of you. Like, all these things.
The emotional blackmail.
Yeah. All these things that all of us are experiencing so often. And in that, every part of my being was disrespected. Like, I was either laughed at, screamed at, or shamed for whatever I was saying. And people constantly tried to force me into this one-spaced line that was too narrow for me to begin with, like my entire teenage years. And they tried to force me into this frame they've designed for me, but I just couldn't fit in. And if I wouldn't listen, if I wouldn't act according their will, they would just strangle my soul just a little bit more by either guilt tripping, gaslighting, manipulating emotionally and mentally, abusing me and pressuring me into someone that I was very not.
Into conforming.
Yeah. And
obedient.
Yeah. And the older I got, the more I saw that who I am will never, ever meet their expectations and what they want from me. And I couldn't deal with it for a very long time. And it just got only worse, but I just accepted that I won't fit in.
And actually what you're saying, before you started saying all of that, is it's in our community really hard for people to hear us talk about these experiences from our childhood. Say we do love our families, but we can also be really critical of what happened and the way they raised us and how the community expects obedience and conformity from girls, from young women and from women. And I want to know a bit more about what it was like growing up between two different cultures, so the German culture and Albanian, how you felt that shift between your identities depended on who you were in the home and who you were outside of the home. How did that shape your sense of belonging?
So I've had an identity crisis my entire life.
Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club.
So, no matter where I went, like whether it was with my friends or at home or at school, I just I was constantly in this crisis. And when it comes to like comparing home and life outside of home, I felt like I was living a complete double life. Because the outside world treated me very differently compared to the inside world. And what I mean by identity crisis is that when I, for example, be open-minded or self-reflective and, my philosophical, analytical me, I was too German, I was too Western. But when I'd be open-spirited, my loud me, my slang me and touchy me, my crazy me, I would be too Albanian, too immigrant for people. And for years I was careful, about what parts I'd express and where I would express them. So I definitely needed to shift my persona depending on who I was with. And in that, I definitely had no sense of belonging. My sense of belonging was completely disturbed. And I knew that I didn't feel like I belonged into my family, nor into the German culture or into the Albanian culture. And the thing is that I thought there was something wrong with me. But the bigger issue that I see is that society didn't and doesn't respect or accept this newly formed cultural identity, you know, which is the diaspora. We are an identity in itself, but people constantly wanted me to choose. They would say, you know, you either have to be German entirely or you have to be Albanian entirely. You cannot be both, nor can you be something outside of it. And also another thing that no one has taught me is that this entire issue isn't even about me being too German or too Albanian in the first place. It was about me being too much of myself, and people couldn't handle me. And
that hits deep to my core. Absolutely. It's that feeling like you're such an outsider, even in your own family, even in your own community, like you're othered.
Yeah,
that you don't belong anywhere. And I think so many of us as Albanian girls, young Albanian women, or women our age feel like this. And I want you to know that you are so not alone in that. Like, so many of us feel like we didn't belong anywhere, whether it was in our community or whether it was, for example, like us growing up here in England. Us nuk je like British, us nuk je Shqiptar. You know, and it probably feels very, very similar for a lot of women and girls that grow up in the diaspora, 100%.
Yeah, because if they go the Western side, then they lose their Albanian identity. And then if they go to the Albanian side, they lose all their free will. So it's, which one do you pick? And then as you become an adult, I mean, I can speak for myself. As I became an adult, the fun and everything that I had with my family faded because I became this whole new Leo, this whole new feminist that just didn't fit anywhere in the conversation, and they just stopped even picking conversations with me because it always ended in debate.
Yeah. They always end in a fight rather than a healthy discussion.
And that's the thing, it's a wild concept because how are we even debating women and girls' safety? It shouldn't even be a debate. It shouldn't be a debate. Women and girls deserve safety no matter where they are, in particular in marginalised communities like ours.
Just in general, I feel like no one teaches us that it's okay to be in the in-between, and that, you know, it's okay to not have found your identity yet, that you're still exploring it, and that you don't need to choose sides. So yeah, I always thought there was something wrong with me, but as someone, and I know I can definitely claim that about myself, as someone being, you know, one of the most free-spirited people that this world has met. I was a walking trigger sign.
I love that. I was a walking trigger sign.
I was a walking
Girl,
trigger
where have you
sign
been
for
this whole
people.
time?
Where have you
For people. And when I was younger, you know, I
Took you too long to find us.
I couldn't deal with that. Like, now I love it, but back then I could not deal with it at all. And I was you know, I was struggling, especially also like with friendships, like, you know, bonding with people from an authentic place, because I was constantly, you know, trying to fit in. I was a social bird. I was very extroverted, so I always had friends, but I still felt so lonely in my experience. So lonely, so alone. And in that, and it was a fact that I was alone, because at home, no one did think the way that I did. No one talked the way I did. So no one could be part of this journey with me, and I was alone in it. And with the years, I needed to learn how to deal with that loneliness. And I think it was around the age of 15 that I really started to bond with people and make friendships from a place of authenticity. And I would either, you know, make friendships with people who were at the intersection of two cultures like I was, or with people who respected that there are people who live at that intersection and don't try to categorize us or make us choose. And since then, you know, the level of loneliness that I felt definitely dropped and fell. And I felt like that was the time that I started to build my own little community of people.
I mean, I think for us growing up, for example, for myself, growing up in the diaspora, I only found that solace in and amongst other black girls at school, because they were the only other girls at school who had that intersection, who understood what it was like to be so different from the white Western girls.
Yeah.
Because obviously, like, we're white, so we present as though we are like every other Western culture physically, but actually behind it all, our culture and our community expectations on women is not like white Western culture whatsoever. So mentioning that you grew up in a strict household beyond the physical environment, what unspoken messages about identity, love and worth were you absorbing as a child?
When it comes to identity, I felt like people were teaching me that it's something that it's being handed onto you from your family, rather than something that you define for yourself, that your ethnic background is your entire identity as opposed to a fraction of it, you know, and a fraction of who you are. And you're not allowed to question this or trying to redefine it. My identity is supposed to be tied to people's perception, so that I have to always make sure to keep appearances at the cost of self. And you're supposed to obey this flag, this eagle we so proudly form, when it is the very thing that keeps so many people like us, like me, from meeting ourselves freely without a fight. So that was what was being taught. And if you didn't obey, they tried to take away of yourself, like telling you you're not Albanian, you're not, you know, you're not human, or you're not my daughter, when I was still all those things. I was taught that it should be feared and controlled, because I could only fall in love with someone in the appropriate time and with the appropriate person, meaning a Catholic, Christian, Albanian boy that comes only from a specific area in Kosovo, and that has a a good family name, or how I would call it, an illusionary family reputation, because whatever reputation is out there it's not a reflection of what is happening in our homes. And I quote what was taught me from day one, and that is, Albanians are incapable of loving people that do not share the same culture. It's not in our DNA, in our blood, to love beyond cultural borders. And everyone who does it is a sinner. So, yeah, there was so much hate towards other cultures and people with a different cultural background. You could be friends with people, and that was already, and I have to mention this here, that it was already something amazing in that matter about my family. Like, I could invite them at home, but they're just friends. They're just guests.
They're over there.
Yeah,
and
they're
it's
over
acceptable
there.
when they're over there.
Exactly.
Oh my God, I relate to this so much.
But they can never be part of the family. You know,
they're outsiders.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they can be in your lives as long as we're comfortable with it. And when it comes to the way I was raised, I felt like love is conditional.
And for me and Leo, for me and Lejla, it's so refreshing to hear it from you, because you were 10 years younger than me, and 10 years ago, like we just said, like we were like,
not here. We were not where you are. Yeah, I think
so,
that level of emotional maturity that you have is basically what we're saying. We wish we'd had that.
Yeah.
When we were 21, 100%. Like, I feel like that would have been such a great starting point for me, just to recover from all the childhood trauma.
And I feel so seen by
you.
Yes. I genuinely feel so seen by you.
Absolutely.
Same goes to you, and for you giving me the space to talk here. And I feel like the reason why I'm at that place already, like now, is because of the access that I grew up with. Like, you know, Gen Z grows up with the internet. Yeah. I always had the access to the outside world, to books and podcasts and all of that. And that has allowed me to see things differently from like early on. I wasn't like capsulized. Simply my community, but I always had, like, in a second I could reach out to the outside.
They were
world.
lifelines for you. Yeah, exactly. To know that you weren't alone and that there is a different way of life out there.
When it comes to my worth, I was taught that my worth is something that isn't guaranteed, that it is something touchable, that it's something that can be taken away from me. and that my worth is directly tied to my family's to my family itself, that I'm worthless without my family, and they kind of like try to create this dependency based on fear rather than connection, natural connection based on love. Which just isn't true. You know, we know that now, that we are not worthless without our families, and every ounce of integrity was taken away since the moment I started developing my own opinion. And I always felt like I have to prove myself, that I'm enough intelligent, that I'm smart enough, that I deserve to be seen from eye to eye, that I deserve that space at the table, that I deserve to be heard and seen, and that I had to prove that I'm adult enough, whatever that should mean. And I feel like we live in this, because apparently we live in this world where kids aren't supposed to gain equal respect as adults, and the equal seriousness, but are getting laughed at and belittled as if the opinions they've just developed, as the opinions that we've just developed as kids, don't matter as much as the opinions elders have for years now. And I always hated this hierarchy of like, elders know it better, kids don't know anything.
And then even in that hierarchy, it wasn't just the adults. There was a hierarchy in and amongst the adults themselves. It was, you had to be well educated, a community leader, a man.
Yeah, a man.
You're financially well off as well. So it wasn't that you were just any adult. It felt like a particular type of adult held the most value in their opinions, in the things that they believed in.
Yeah, and then that trickled down into the kids' hierarchy within the kids. Yeah. So, for example, I'm one of 4 girls and I've got one brother. My brother takes more priority than all 4 of us do combined because he's a boy. Mm-hmm. So... Yeah.
Anyone that's older than you, like not at all, like you can't even like rationally look at things. You can't just say anything.
You cannot be critical
at all. Yeah,
at all. And any kind of criticality in our community is met with so much disdain and fear, and that you're instantly shamed for being critical. Like, oh, you hate yourself. Yeah, that's why you're discussing these topics, or that's why you think differently to the rest of the community. Must be because you hate yourself,
or you hate your dad. Or
There's something, and it's
so
not
much.
just because actually you do not think like them, that you had a different mentality growing up and you were struggling to find a safe way of expressing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like one of the reasons why people believe in this hierarchy is one like specific mainstream myth, and that is that adults have more wisdom than kids do. And I absolutely think that is a lie. I believe that, we have to look at wisdom and knowledge, and it's not something that you learn or gain externally. It's something that you remember internally. It's ingrained into all of us. And I believe that a 4-year-old child carries the equal amount of wisdom as an adult or an elder. The only difference is that for example, an 80-year-old woman had a lifetime of growth to learn to articulate that wisdom, whilst a child is just learning the words to externalize that wisdom. But if you take a great look, and if you really just look at a child and what it does, even if it can vocalize its wisdom, you can observe the wisdom that it carries. So I believe that we all have knowledge and we all have a certain set of wisdom, and that we all can learn from each other. But what people are taught, especially in our community, is that children know nothing, children are stupid, and they just have to listen to their parents, and parents have nothing apparently to learn from their kids, even though that is the very purpose of a child coming to your life, and you birthing a child, that is to learn from your child. No matter how many self-help books I would read, no matter how many studies I would put on the table, I mean, I would even like take exams from school and bring it onto the table, for example, in topics of theology, it was never enough. I still remained unseen and unheard and laughed at, with my values as a joke and my sheer existence as a phase I will eventually outgrow, but I never really did.
Questioning your faith is such a deeply personal journey, right? And it's a painful one when you feel so alone, especially in a religious household. Do you remember the first time you started to have these realizations that your beliefs were different and how that affected you? Because this is about your personal journey and how you came to become agnostic at that time.
So it wasn't a specific moment. I think it just develops over the years, and having all these access to the outside world, and it was even around the COVID time when the world kind of was like going crazy, and I just felt like there was not a higher thing that I could turn to. So I felt it was quite natural. It didn't happen from one day to the other. It just moved on gradually, and then eventually I realized, okay, you know what, the atheists and the agnostics scriptures that we're reading about in school, I actually get them. I get their perspective. I understand why they look at things this way, and honestly, reading my self-help books has helped me more than kneeling down and praying for hours and looking into the abyss did, at that time. And so I was really comfortable with just, kind of like turning my back towards Christianity. I didn't think even it was a big deal. So when I dropped it, I just said it like it was nothing, because I didn't expect it to be something like such a big deal. But people went nuts. Like they went crazy. Like no one could believe that I would even say that. And people started judging me immediately, telling me all sorts of things like you're walking the path of the devil, and, you will ruin your life. And how can you do this to us? How can you do this to your entire, to your entire line of ancestry? And I just didn't expect it at all. I was just like a 14-year-old just trying to figure out the world, and I didn't have anyone guiding me down my spiritual journey. No one. No one asked, no one allowed me again to have that space of questioning and trying to understand how the world works
in your own time.
In my own time.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, people just expected me, no, you gotta just believe, and you cannot tell anyone outside of the house. But that was the moment where I disagreed. I was like, I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to do the cross sign, because that's just not who I am and what I identify myself with. And I'm not going to pretend and play for you just so that, our family reputation is, remains good and well. So yeah, it was a lot. It was really, really hard. I feel like when it comes to my relationship to my family, that's when it really got bad. I completely distanced myself emotionally, and we constantly fought. We constantly, like every single week. And when they would ask me questions, it wasn't to truly understand me, but to kind of like trap me and find a way of saying, oh no, you're like, you're being, what's the word to say? Contradictory.
Contradictory.
Yeah, contradictory. Yeah. You're contradictory, and what you're saying is blasphemy, and, trying to find a way to find the lie behind my truth. So yeah, that was a lot. So I just kind of like distanced myself, and I just didn't enter these conversations anymore. So anytime I was somewhere and people were asking me these questions, I didn't explain myself any longer. I just either went away, put on my AirPods, whatever helped me to just zone out.
Yeah. So leaving everything behind at 18 is such a radical act of self-realization. What were the signs earlier in your life that you were someone who would eventually choose freedom?
I think it started really early on, like at around 13. I always felt like I had this urge to run away and to just be gone, like not in a suicidal sense, but in a physical sense. Like I just anywhere else, but in this life and in this home, as long as it was by myself, because that was the only space where I was at peace, the only place where I was at peace. And sometimes it was, conscious, like I could hear myself saying, you know, I want to run away. But the majority of the time it was really an unconscious desire. So again, I always had this feeling of this is not where I belong, and there must be a life outside of this reality, and there must be something out there in the world that, you know, out there, there's my real life, you know, my real me waiting for me. And at 14, I kind of like randomly came, you know, read through a blog. And it was around that time that all these travel influencers came up on Instagram. And then, you know, I was around that time, you know, self-development was trendy and I was getting into it. And
at the age of 14, bearing in mind, I keep having to remind myself, like 14, 18, 21, like it's incredible. Your self-awareness is incredible.
Thank you. I always felt like I could not suppress things. They were just, if something happened, it was constantly on my mind. I couldn't suppress it. I was always just trying to understand it. So yeah, at 14, I came across this vlog, and, you know, they would say, you know, if you travel the world, it will change your life, and, you know, you will meet your real self, and you get to, you know, grow in a tremendous way. And to me, it was like, yeah, that sounds good. I want that. And then I went to my parents with it, and I had a lot of luck when it comes to that, because I knew my parents' answer wasn't normal and wasn't ordinary, because what they would say was like, yeah, we will absolutely allow you to travel in your gap year after high school. Just, you know, make sure to get good grades and we will support you 100%. And there was no one else in my family at that time that has ever done something like that.
Wow.
I had only one cousin that traveled to Australia the year afterwards. He was the first person to leave the family at the age of 25. And everybody supported that. But when it came to me then, you know, at 18, I had only my parents like directly supporting me, and everyone was going to them and telling them, you know, are you crazy? You're letting your 18-year-old female, you know, child, you know, your daughter, to travel alone across the world. You know, you cannot do that. But they kept on insisting and saying, no, but we genuinely have confidence in her and trust her to do that. And so they did, and they supported me, and I was allowed to leave. And in that, you know, I'm to this very day, I'm so grateful that I've done that, because what they've done is they were finally giving me the physical space, and I could finally give myself the emotional space.
The breathing space.
Yeah, the breathing space that I deserved and that I needed.
You talk about the past refusing to stay behind, no matter how far you've travelled. Was there a specific memory or realisation that forced you to stop running away and truly begin confronting yourself?
Yes, there definitely was. So when I got to Australia, I saw how great life can be without my family, and with a distance towards my family, and then the distance towards the terror at home. But the thing was that was, you know, confirming my belief system that I have to physically run away from home and from family to feel at peace. Wow. And you know, it felt like running away from home or staying away from home. And even at some point I thought about cutting off my family. Was like the only possibility to not feel this pain and this void, and to end this vicious cycle of not feeling enough, and all these negative emotions. And along the trip, I still had moments, you know, of unbearable lows. So they would happen, but not not as often as home, but things were coming back at me. So I felt like already that there's something inside of me that I cannot run away from. But it wasn't until the end of the trip. So when I kind of like knew, okay, it's about time to return home, you know, where everyone was asking me to return home, that I had a person in Australia, my go-to person that I could sit down with, and to actually say it out loud for the first time in my life that I want to run away. I cannot bear being in my home anymore. Like, I cannot carry this. I cannot breathe. And in Australia, I was so free to breathe. And I just didn't want that breath to be taken away again. And that's when I saw in what a state I was in and how bad it was. And I understood that even if I stay in Australia and cut off my family, like, it will not erase my pain. It will not, fill this void, or, it will not take away these thoughts of being worthless and unlovable. Like, all my negative, like my entire negative belief system, won't be gone just because my family is gone. So whether I'm going to continue to physically run away or not, it wasn't going to change my emotions, and my past will still follow me no matter where I go.
I was literally having the same conversation with my therapist this morning. This exact same conversation. And he said the thing that follows me around, I've got a really good relationship with my therapist. I've been going to him for 6 years now. And he said the thing that tends to follow a lot of people around when they carry childhood trauma is just sadness.
Yeah.
It's a sadness, and it's the grief of time loss. And when you're saying that, I feel so seen. That's incredible.
What was the emotional process of turning your personal journey into a memoir? Did writing your memoir bring up feelings you hadn't fully processed yet?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. When it comes to my writing, it was something that I've done my entire life. I've wrote since I was a little kid. It started off with journaling, and that's, I think, like, one of the reasons why I'm so self-reflective at such a young age. It's because I started reflecting upon my emotions and thoughts from a very early age. Like, I was 5 or 6 years old when I started writing, and like
journaling.
Journaling.
That young?
No, it can be like the smallest things, like
Wow.
I ate a pizza and I like the pizza day, but that is already
like a diary.
something,
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah.
Bless me, a child.
like this, literally.
Please bless me with a child. Like Martina.
So writing was always my way of releasing emotions and of processing experiences. And growing up, as I said, my existence was seen as a phase rather than the reality of my being. And so writing was my way of survival. It was that piece of paper was the only safe space I could turn to and let myself truly fall. It was the only place I could truly open up my thoughts without being shamed, guilt-tripped, neglected, ignored, or corrected. And it was my way of getting to know myself and build a healthy relationship to myself. So specifically, writing this book is one of the greatest and grandest things that I will ever do, and I'm so proud of it. And writing this memoir meant reliving it all. I experienced sad tears, I experienced joyful tears, but mostly grateful tears, because the craft, like, I'm so grateful towards the craft of memoir. I just love it, because it's not just about writing these emotions, thoughts, and memories down. I had the chance to release them, but also it's about reframing them through storytelling, and you make art of memories that have haunted you. Absolutely. And you give them purpose, and that's the beauty behind it. So definitely memories came up all the time, and I wasn't even sure which memories I'm going to bring in and which not. And some memories came up that I haven't thought about in years, and I was like, I really, really want to put this in. Thing was that while I was writing it, I saw how much I have grown, and how far along I was in my healing journey. Because it was very hard for me to believe that I was in such great pain, and that I had so much hatred and frustration inside of me towards my family, and the hate that I felt towards myself. And it was actually really hard to tap into the old Martina, the one with that had a completely different truth than mine today. And to write from that standpoint was really uncomfortable again, to kind of like walk through it all. But where is it, like, why I say I had grateful tears is because I knew that I could never ever return to that state of before again. And so it's been a true healing journey, and sharing this with the rest of the world is is what's gonna heal me even more, because I get the chance to connect with other people.
So now, if you had the opportunity to sit down with an Albanian girl that's going through all these social pressures, expectations within the Albanian community, what are some things, or what is the first thing you would want to say to her directly?
It would be that you have the ability to transform the very things that have hurt you into the things that fuel you, that you have the ability to transform, the power to transform what once burdened you into what makes you thrive now. And you have the power to change your entire reality. And for me, there have been 3 steps that have worked, and they might not work for you, but all them, I just want to share them because they might help you. And if there's a little chance that you will actually gain something from that, it would be, I would be so grateful for that. I feel like step number 1 down my journey was radical acceptance towards myself, but also towards my past and towards my family, that they will never change. They might never see me, might never understand me, might never, hear me, and to kind of like let that need that I had inside of me, go. And then the second step, after you've kind of like established that self-acceptance and that acceptance towards others, especially if you're still living with your family or inside the community, especially if you're still confronted with, for example, emotional violence, is that you have the power to transform it and to shift your perspective. So when we experience emotional violence as children, it's direct trauma. Whatever they say, we believe. And because as children or teenagers, we don't have a filter, and we're not supposed to have a filter. We're not supposed to understand these, higher meanings of why our parents are acting the way they are, why are people saying these things to us. But now, as an adult, we do have those filters. We do have the capacity to understand and to move through different perspectives and to, put ourselves into our parents' shoes, or, whoever's. And we have that filter, and we have the responsibility to take care of ourselves. So now when someone insults you, I want us all to understand that that has nothing to do with you. Like, not at all. It has nothing to do with you or your worth. It is simply a reflection of their relationship they have towards themselves and their belief systems on the world. And so now the magic trick for me was it to change the conversation I had with myself. You say, I will cause you cancer one day. I say, your self-destructive, self-erasing, hatred-filled mentality sure can bring yourself cancer if you keep manifesting it. You say, I don't have a daughter. I say, you can fathom and hold the greatness of your daughter. You were too blinded and misguided as a child yourself, unable to see your own greatness and abilities. You say, I'm a shame and disgrace to the family, but I'm the living proof of every great work we've all ever done. I'm everything you've asked for. I'm everything you've prayed for. I'm your fulfilled prayers. Because when you ask for a child that has a better life, a better education, more freedom, more wisdom, you might not have expected this, but me, I am exactly what you asked for. And I'm the face of radical freedom. That was what you were asking for. That is the kind of child you were asking for. And you might have not been aware that that is the daughter or the son that you've prayed for. Or that's what your wish looks like when it is fulfilled in reality. But you asked for this journey the moment you chose to birth a child, to bring a child into this world. But no one has taught you that your child is going to be a challenge and is going to challenge your very being, or that is even the purpose. We're taught that, we have, our child has to learn from us, but we have nothing to learn from our children, which, falls back to that mainstream myth of, children know nothing. And you ask for this grand generational transformation, yet you aren't ready to let go of this little frame that doesn't allow you to see that your wish was granted, and that I am here, and that you have the chance to look at me, and we have the chance to grow together if you look at me. So every part of myself you struggle to love and accept is a reflection of the very parts of yourself you hide from and struggle to love. But I love you, and I love myself, so I won't shame you any longer for trying to pass down your shame upon me, that the shame that you're very much still unconsciously embracing. I am a cycle breaker. I break the cycle of shame, and by transforming shame into self-love, I am healing. And that's what I meant before, like taking the sentences, like all the things that were told to you that are wrong about you, or that you know, that all these sentences that have shamed you and guilt tripped you, take them, because there's this part of
amazing.
you.
Sorry.
You
were just looking at
It's just like listening to going to an open mic and listening to spoken word, or what is it called? I don't know what it's called. Where they write their poems.
Yeah,
and
spoken word. Yeah,
it's just like listening to that.
You know, that's what I meant by, you know, taking the sentence, analyzing it, you know, looking at it from a rational standpoint, and then, you know, literally, and excuse my language, but take shit and make art out of it. And that's how you heal. And step 3 would be to be gentle and compassionate with yourself, because it's not like an overnight journey. Honestly, I so often when I have something and I'm like, I want to heal, and then I want to do it like in a couple of months, and that's it.
Not how it works.
That's not how it works.
That is not how it works.
Not
I
at
can
all.
tell you from my own experience.
Not at all. It's like a lifelong journey that you're committing to doing work on a day-to-day basis, and it takes up so much energy. You know, it's a lot of work, and I can say for myself, you know, I sound like, all guru and stuff, but, you know, I struggle all the time still, you know, not in the same amount as I did before, you know, when I was a teenager, because as I said, I have this filter and I have a lot of self-love for myself, but I keep still very much fucking it up. And so often I succumb to my lower nature instead of speaking from my higher truth. And that is okay. On some days I do great. On some days I don't. On some days I feel the same frustration as I did as a teenager. And on some days, you know, on other days I get back to my own understanding. And that's okay. Like it will go like this. It's not a straight line. It's not supposed to be a straight line. And that's okay. So be gentle with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. And I know that you believe that you cannot do that. I know that you're so tired of everything, of all the voices and the noise and the expectations of everything. But there is a greater reason and purpose even behind your struggle. And this is not me romanticizing it. You know, no one needs what we have to face. No one needs physical abuse. No one needs emotional abuse, because people then try to argue and tell me, you know, but you became so much stronger.
Oh,
you became you became mature at the age of 21 already. And I'm like, you can be confident as hell without needing to go through this. You can raise your child with love and positivity, and it can reach that state. So what I want to say is that you no longer need to wait for anybody else. All you truly need is to see yourself. And in that, you will find all the love and the peace you have longed for your entire life, and even God's presence within yourself. And then you will build true community, you know? And then if you believe you cannot do it, look at us. I mean, all 3 of us. We are the living proof. We're the living proof of it. We've started to build a home within ourselves. And now by sharing it, like you guys through podcasts or mine, you know, in the future through my book, we're literally starting to build a community and a home outside of us. And that is based on real love. And so I would quote, what you weren't given but you're longing for, give it onto others and you'll receive it yourself. And that's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And I want to invite everyone out there who's listening to let go of this frame that you have squeezed yourself into in order to be accepted. Smash it down, throw it on the ground, and see that every part of you, and I mean every part of you, is so pure sacred art that no frame could possibly ever hold it. So just let it go and just truly see yourself, and you will love it. I'm saying it. You know, I love being a walking trigger sign.
Yeah.
I love it. I so don't care.
Company. You're in good company.
We love it.
Freedom to me means to allow myself to think and feel whatever I do without shame, without without needing the confirmation or acceptance and understanding of others, and act upon life under my own terms, you know, be in constant change and create my own culture, my own traditions, my own lifestyle based on my own value system, and act from this home I have built within. And the way to protect my freedom is by being completely honest and intimate and naked with myself, and to nurture the very parts that society has deemed and I have deemed as demonic, inhuman, or ugly, and that to claim that even those parts of me are holy, and to return to that state of my higher nature, and understand that no one can take away of myself unless I allow them to. That is the way I want to protect my freedom for the rest of my life.
Martina,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have nothing more to say.
What can you say? I feel like this, you know, like a mic drop. Like,
Yeah,
thank you for joining us from all the way from Germany,
we feel so
and taking the time
privileged.
out of your trip to be with us today, and for continuing to pave the way for young Albanian women. You are absolutely phenomenal. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you guys for having me here and letting me be a part of Trime, this beautiful home that you've built. Thank you.
You're welcome.